The murder of Baylor basketball player Patrick Dennehy is one of the most tragic stories in sports. Can you refresh the audience on what made this case just so bizarre?
Yeah, I think it really is when Patrick Dennehy went missing in the summer of 2003. All of these rumors started swirling about teammates of his threatening him, allegations of guns, drugs, all this crazy stuff that was going on at the world's largest Baptist university. You wouldn't think that Baylor University would have issues of guns and drugs and these type of allegations that were coming out. So it's a bizarre story, and then once you get toward Patrick being murdered, it gets even crazier because of the attempted cover-up that ensues.
Dave Bliss, the head coach at Baylor, was a big part of that attempted cover-up. He was completely disgraced at the time. You got him to talk on camera about the case, and he does take responsibility for some of his role in this tragedy. But Patrick, he appears to still be untruthful about some of the crucial facts of the case. What was most surprising to you about talking with Dave Bliss?
Dave sees himself as the victim. And he almost kind of oddly blames Patrick Dennehy for the predicament that he is put in. At every turn, Dave makes statements that leads me to believe he really does see himself as the victim here, and that he didn't really do anything wrong. Cheating comes to no surprise that huge D1 schools, there's cheating that goes on. They pay players, they skirt the rules, they operate in a gray area. And I think that's where Dave is coming from when he says some of this stuff. Like, look, you think I'm the only person that's done something wrong here? But it's insane when you consider the context of what's happening in the story and how far he really went to save himself. But there's no doubt in my mind Dave sees himself as a victim.
The Baylor connection in the Waco area runs extremely deep. But can you explain how that connection may have played a part in the legal side of the murder trial, and then how it may come up again in this Baylor football scandal where now over 50 women are accusing Baylor football players of sexual assault?
Yeah, I think that was the most surprising thing for us doing the documentary was realizing what was going on in the legal defense of Carlton Dotson, or the lack of legal defense for Carlton Dotson. He had two court-appointed attorneys, both of whom were Baylor grads, the judge is a Baylor grad. And you can even see in one shot of the film where Carlton is standing in the courtroom, the picture right behind him over his shoulder is a picture of Baylor University. So he was surrounded by people that literally had Baylor as seemed to be a primary interest. And it was not the defense of Carlton Dotson. And I think if you look at what happened with the case, you got to ask yourself, who does it benefit? By this not going to trial, who benefits most? It's certainly not Carlton, who seemed to have a rock-solid defense here, but it's Baylor that benefited by this not going to trial. So it's, for us, it was like, okay, we can really see that the hand of Baylor touches every corner of Waco here.
Meanwhile, Carlton Dotson is in jail right now. He's eligible for parole, I believe, in the year 2021. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
There's a final line of the film. It implies that a scandal is like cancer. If you don't remove it all, it will grow back. How does that line apply to Baylor?
So what's interesting about that is, we started making this film 2 years ago. So the sexual assault scandal had not happened when we were, deep into filming. And Grady Irvin, who was Carlton Dotson's initial defense attorney, knows more about college athletics than just about anybody because his primary set of clients are college athletes. So he was speaking from a point of, you can't blame this all on Carlton when there's greater issues in these institutional programs. If you're not transparent, if you don't purge it out, it's going to keep happening. If people aren't going to take responsibility, they're not going to go on camera and talk about it, they're not going to answer questions, then you're never going to get past this. And it's kind of a very dark foreshadowing of what's going on right now, with the sexual assault scandal, which we didn't get into at all because, that's for a completely separate film to go into. We didn't want to tack on something as serious as, sexual violence just to kind of do a I told you so at the end.
What can we learn from the scandal at Baylor? I mean, you see Patrick Dennehy's family. This is something they still live with every single day. What should we take away from this?
I think, you got to look at this and say, you ask yourself, how does this happen? and then how does it take 14 years for this information to really get out? You know, this is something that came and went very quickly, but I think it is kind of a cautionary tale of, you know, winning as being paramount. You know, and Baylor University is the world's largest Baptist university. They've had very conservative rules, but that does not apply to the athletic program. And when you're in the Big 12, you have huge donors. There's hundreds of millions of dollars tied into these television contracts and all of this stuff. It's all comes down to a desire to win. And I think that you learn through this film that time and time again, the choice is made not to do the right thing necessarily, but to save a program or to keep that revenue coming in. And I think you can see that, you know, something like this can happen. And once it happens once, you know, there's nothing to stop it from happening again.
By far one of the most extreme examples that we've ever seen in college athletics. But it's a remarkable documentary. It's called Disgraced. You can watch it now on Showtime On Demand. Patrick Kondelis, the director of the film, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.